Hey guys, greetings and salutations. Thought I'd address another topic here. I actually wanted to talk about expletives, or other people would know them as bad words. I want to actually address one thing that became very personal to me. This is some years ago during my conversion as a Christian. When God called me out of this darkness that I was living in and brought me into His light, His beautiful, shining, purifying light, and I remember just being in Los Angeles growing up. Like many of the men and other young ladies around me, I thought it was okay using the N word. I thought it was actually something that, was pretty fine. And as a black American, I figured because my people were oppressed, I had that mindset at the time, that victim mentality. I actually thought it was acceptable to use filthy language, specifically the N word. I thought, if anything, I, as a black American man, I have the privilege of using this word because my people were oppressed, and that my justification was that our culture has turned this really horrendous, horrific word into something positive. We created it as a word of endearment, and it can also still be an insult, but that was my justification, that it was okay to use this word. But over time, really quick after my conversion, I found myself really uncomfortable with using certain words or even entertaining the idea of doing certain things because, God had really transformed me spiritually from inside out. And it was almost like this domino effect, that different pieces and different areas in my life was being addressed, with God's Spirit. I was okay with the idea of not really getting married. I thought at the time marriage was just some type of government conspiracy to kind of group people together. And over time, very shortly after my conversion, God changed my mindset to actually adore marriage. And I love the union of marriage. I think it's one of the most beautiful things in the world. But a part of one of those many areas that was transformed in my life was my understanding for language. And even though in my previous life, somebody outside of Christ, I did a very good job with justifying using filthy language and expletives and things like that, I realized very shortly that I was an ambassador of Christ, that I did not have the luxury of using filthy language anymore, not like those outside of Christ and the rest of the world. I also noticed over time, as I was, I'm going to say, God really gave me the focus and the strength to stop using these expletives, these, filthy words. People started treating me very differently. It's interesting because just within the last, I'm going to say, few months, I've had a few of my friends, people who identify as Christian, or even one of my atheist buddies. He's a friend of mine. And, he admitted just some weeks ago, we're having a conversation, and he slipped up and used some word, four-letter filth word. And then he said, "You know what, James?" He stopped himself after he said it, and he said on the phone, he said, "Man, I don't know what it is, but every time I say something around you, like one of these words, man, I always feel guilty." And I explained to him that, I'm not God. I'm not going to judge anybody based on, them using these kind of words or things like that. But I thought it was very interesting because this is a discussion that happens amongst many Christians, especially those that are mature in their faith, because obviously people know and they learn that within the times of just spending time with us as Christians, people realize that we don't use filthy language, like not at all, and there's even no slip-ups, and God has been very gracious with that, because I want to definitely give Him the credit, because I know for a fact I did not have the authority or the ability to not use filthy language if God didn't intervene in my life and change me from the inside out. I do have some verses I'd like to share just to remind all of us, and this is also something that I have to kind of remind myself, that we have to be responsible with the words that we use, because when we have people around us church friends, people within the Christian faith, when we have people at our jobs, at our schools, our families, maybe we even have our own families, as men and as women, we are conducting ourselves to represent the eternal God. We are ambassadors of Christ, and this is the highest authority that we have. This is over, whatever you want to say, the president, the pope, whomever, a world leader. Being a representative of God has a lot of responsibilities that come with this position, so it's not something to take lightly. So I actually just want to go through a few verses, maybe 4 or 5, that the Bible shares, and it's just something to keep in mind, just to remind us and reinforce us that when it comes to our language, we have to be mindful of what it is that we are sharing, So first verse I have here is Ephesians 4:29. This is what Paul writes in the book of Ephesians. He says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give good grace to those who hear." So already Paul is letting us know that when we are speaking, we should be uplifting people. We should be pouring into people. It should be words of encouragement. There should be some type of grace, obviously, behind our words. And it's impossible for us to be taken seriously as a Christian, and we're using 4-letter filth words to express disgust, and so it's something to just be mindful of, that as ambassadors of Christ, we don't get to behave like the rest of the world. We're separate and we're different. That's what the idea of sanctified even means, is to be set apart. So we're not the same as everyone else. We're different. And the Bible teaches that, when we are born again, we're a new creation. So we shouldn't be resembling the old life and like the people of the rest of the world. Here's another verse here, Colossians 3:8. It says, "But now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth." Now, although, the Bible often teaches the authority that God has when it comes to our lives, I think it's Philippians 1:6, it says, he who starts a good work in you, meaning God, will finish it until the day of Christ. So God is responsible for our salvation. He's the one that's going to maintain our faith, if our faith is genuine. However, there are responsibilities that we have to conduct ourselves, I have the responsibility to abstain from watching pornography. I have the responsibilities of, abstaining from getting upset with people or spending time with people that I know that may agitate me. There's a responsibility that we have. And so the Bible is telling us to put those things away. Put away those things that are ungodly. Put away those things that are not representing Christ correctly, And one of the things that I'm learning as well as I'm maturing is how influential my life has been to other people. There are a lot of times when I am approached by people and they say, "Well, hey, James, I want you to know that the reason why I started opening the door for my girlfriend is because I watched you open the door for my mother all the time, or our friends, who are females and who are ladies, and that's something that's very impactful to me, to hear things like that. I've had other people tell me, "James, you're so committed to the Word of God, man. Now I'm reading the Bible regularly, or I'm reading it with, as I started a Bible study with some of my friends and family or whoever, and I think it's beautiful to know that God can use someone who was formerly a sinner, saved by His grace, and influence people for the better, So it's really important just to keep that in mind. Here's another verse here. We have Ephesians 5:4. "Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place. But instead, let there be thanksgiving." So again, Paul is being used obviously by God to reinforce the point that when it comes to our speech, we have to be responsible for the type of words that we use. And again, we are representing the eternal God. When people listen to you, they're going to say, "Okay, what is your worldview? What is your standpoint? What is your position?" As soon as you assert that you're a Christian, as soon as you let people know that you read the Bible, as soon as you say, "Yes, I do go to church," people are going to start watching you. Even people who may be in the church that are not necessarily converted, they're going to watch you and they're going to make sure and see, okay, is this Christianity thing real? The people that may be outside of Christ, maybe atheists, maybe people that reject the Bible. it makes it easier to tarnish the name of Christ and the name of biblical Christianity when someone is practicing hypocrisy. So if you say, hey, I'm a Christian, I've been a Christian for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, 60 years, whatever, and you're speaking like everyone else in the world, you're really demonstrating that God is not that powerful, that God doesn't have authority over changing a person supernaturally through the new birth, which is found in John 3:3. So we have to be very, very careful and very cautious with that. Let me share another verse here. This one's a very important one. Matthew 12:36. I tell you, on the day of judgment, Jesus says, people will give an account for every careless word they speak. Now, I don't know about you, but that is something that gets my attention. In fact, this verse by itself has caused me to pause every time I'm going to speak and address things, even on social media, because think about that for a moment. Think about that for a moment. Every careless word that a person speaks, we're going to give an account on the day of judgment. Think about that. All the careless little jokes, all the crude jokes, all the little things that we're saying that are unnecessary, that really belittle people, maybe something inappropriate, something that does not reflect the nature of God. We're actually going to answer for it. He didn't say you may, we may answer for it. We are going to give an account. We are, so that's Jesus letting us know that we have a responsibility to be mindful of the words that we speak. Christians are going to still get judged. Even if we are in Christ, we're still going to get judged in a different way than those outside of Christ, but we're still going to get judged. So let's be mindful of that. I have one more verse here that I would like to share. It's found in the book of Psalms 19:14. It says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So we have to keep in mind that these things that we share, we want to share things that are going to not only reflect God in a more positive light, but we want to share things that will, uplift our spirits, but also uplift the Lord. The Lord loves when we are actually not only showing through our actions positive or reflective things about, the ways that reflect his nature, but our speech as well. And I've met many people within the last 15 years on social media, and sometimes I met them in person eventually, and I've learned how powerful words are, whether they are written or spoken. There's something very influential about them when they're done right. And we have to just be mindful that as Christians, we don't have the luxury of being reckless like the rest of the world. We have a responsibility to be ambassadors of Christ. And it doesn't matter whom you are, you have to be very careful and mindful of that. So yes, I did put away the N word because that word has no business coming out of my mouth anymore. Not as a Christian and not ever. God bless you guys. Peace. If you have any questions, hit me up. All right. Love you guys. Take care. Bye.